In 1982, Dinamo Zagreb, coached at the time by Yugoslavian manager Ciro Blažević, played in a way that few understood. At a time when the 4-3-3 formation was well established, Blaževic's 3-5-2 system was almost an aberration. But an aberration that worked very well, so much so that Dinamo Zagreb won the national championship of the season. In the 1984 Euro, another application of the 3-5-2 caught attention: the Denmark national team, coached at the time by German Sepp Piontek. But the first version of this formation that shocked the world was Carlos Bilardo's Argentina in the 1986 World Cup. Bilardo's idea was to provide a solid foundation for the Argentine team while giving complete freedom to the star of the time, Diego Maradona. This approach was successful, and Argentina ended up winning their second world title. Another prominent national team to win a World Cup using this system was the Brazilian team in 2002, under the leadership of Luis Felipe Scolari, achieving their fifth world title. Obviously, as the name of the system implies, the 3-5-2 formation consists of a backline of 3 defenders, 5 players in the midfield area with 2 wide midfielders and 2 forwards. Defensively, to prevent vulnerabilities on the flanks, the 3-5-2 could transform into a 5-3-2 with the wing midfielders dropping back, and we see this strategy employed quite often. In the attack, the way players organize themselves within the system defines its characteristics. Talking about the defensive line first. At times, the central defender in the backline of 3 could position himself as a defensive midfielder, with more freedom to advance ahead of the other 2 defenders. Other times, he might function more as a deeper-lying defender providing cover for his fellow defenders. In this scenario, the 2 wing defenders would have more freedom. To make this difference clearer, imagine playing against an opponent with 2 players in the first line of pressure, something that is quite common nowadays. We would have a numerical superiority in this area. If we moved the ball from side to side, there would be good chances to escape using the defenders on the sides, provided they had the freedom to do so. But if we used the central defender as a defensive midfielder, another viable option could involve the goalkeeper creating numerical superiority and placing the central defender slightly advanced, behind the first line. Of course, the arrangement of the 3 defenders would also need to harmonize well with the midfield setup. We could have a midfield with 2 defensive midfielders aligned with the wide midfielders, and 1 attacking midfielder ahead. Alternatively, we could have 1 more centralized defensive midfielder, 2 wide midfielders, and 2 more advanced midfielders supporting the 2 forwards. Certainly, what I'm discussing here isn't an absolute truth, and this situation could be adapted. But the arrangement of the 3 defenders with the central one acting as a defensive midfielder wouldn't likely align well with a midfield setup featuring 1 more centralized defensive midfielder. This is because these 2 players would be in a very similar and potentially conflicting position. On the other hand, a midfield setup with 2 defensive midfielders aligned with the wide midfielders could even help create an overload by involving the defensive midfielder behind the first line, thereby widening the field. The midfield with 2 defensive midfielders can also complement the 3-defender backline, freeing up the wing defenders. In this scenario, the behavior of the defensive midfielder would differ slightly from the previous example. Instead of opening up for the central defender's advancement, they might tuck in a bit toward the center, creating spaces for the defenders to carry the ball forward. For instance, if the left side defender carried the ball forward, there could be an adjustment to create new passing lanes, which could also prompt the left midfielder to advance. And the setup with 1 centralized defensive midfielder also aligns well with this defender organization, as it can form a diamond shape, a concept often seen in positional play strategies. This facilitates the use of the third-man principle, promoting a similar situation as mentioned earlier, but without the risk that ball carrying might introduce. Furthermore, the positioning of the more advanced midfielders could also facilitate progression to the higher lines. Regarding the forwards, variations depend on the characteristics of the duo. We could have 2 reference players, who work more on positioning and receiving the ball in predetermined spots. We could also field 2 quicker players who excel at attacking open spaces. Alternatively, a duo could consist of players with differing styles. In the case of 2 reference players who prefer receiving the ball in specific positions, the best choice would be either a playing style emphasizing wide play and attacking from the flanks, or using midfielders who are adept at attacking spaces from deep positions. In teams that face high pressure when building from the back, thus leaving spaces behind the defense, the team might benefit from utilizing players who excel at attacking vacant spaces. However, most of the time, the choice is for complementary players, as that would allow the team to have both options available. This consideration of the forward pair is also seen in the 4-4-2 formation. However, due to the different formations, certain mechanisms will differ. If you want a better understanding of the mechanics and variations of the 4-4-2 formation in football, I recommend checking out our video on the subject.